a lot of what we're going to talk about each week over the course of the Fat Loss Accelerator is going to be focused on what to actually do rather than how it actually works. But we are going to provide this video as well, just to satisfy your curiosity, but also to give you an understanding of kind of why we're telling you to do certain things or why we're taking the approach that we're choosing to take. So, nutrition overview. So, when we started the Performance Hub, we really saw that there was a lack of, I guess, understanding of nutrition from a lot of clients, but also there wasn't many systems that really held up. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of diets out there, there's a lot of programs out there, but realistically, they don't work very well for a lot of people. So we've adopted a little bit of a different approach, which we've refined over the years, and that has really been centered on, I guess, focusing on the behaviors of the individual and incorporating the science into that rather than expecting the individual just to be able to follow a plan because it's there. So most people go wrong with their nutrition because they don't have much of a system in place or they don't have the behaviors and the routines to fall back on. So a big part of what we focus on is the behaviors and the routines. So we want to be able to differentiate between the big rocks and pebbles or separating the forest from the trees. What's really, really important and what can we be a little bit more flexible with? And that's where things like, eating clean or being good, being bad, being healthy, unhealthy, kind of falls down because there's that all or nothing mindset. And it's really, really hard to stay consistent if that's the approach you're going to take. It only takes something to interrupt your daily routine or life to get a little bit more stressful, and it simply just doesn't work. And I've kind of thrown us in the health and fitness industry under the bus a little bit here. You still see articles like, the 6 foods that'll torch stomach fat and all that kind of stuff. And all of that stuff really is nonsense. So I want to steer away from that stuff as much as we can. So there's no such thing as bad foods, is the first thing. Like, anything in the wrong quantity can be harmful, but there's absolutely no such thing as something that you can never, never eat. So if you eat something bad, but it fits into, your overall energy demands, it's not really going to do too much harm. Or if you occasionally eat something and it goes above your energy demands, that's not the end of the world either. It's absolutely fine. What we obviously want to focus on is getting the majority of our nutrients from nutritious food. If we're relying on, junk food for our entire diet, we're probably going to run into some problems. So it's a bit of a balancing act, but we want to get away again from that kind of all or nothing mindset. This is something, here, where is he? Dr. Eric Helms put this together. And it's the new school nutrition pyramid. So, the one you would have seen in high school or primary school, which was, breads down the bottom, and then it works up from there. This is one that comes into play when it comes to the actual science of nutrition. So energy balance, which is basically your calorie totals in terms of how much you eat and how much you expend. Macronutrients, which is your protein, carbohydrate, and fat intake. Micronutrients, which is your vitamin and mineral intake. Then we have timing, so how often you eat, and then supplements are right up the top. Down the bottom, underneath absolutely everything, though, is behavior and lifestyle. So behavior and lifestyle is what makes it possible for you to add those next layers on the pyramid. And the way that I like to look at this is once behavior and lifestyle is there, then you can look at energy balance, then you can look at macronutrients, then you can look at micronutrients. But if you have, say, the energy balance missing, it doesn't matter how often you eat or what your timing of meals is, because you've got that big rock missing initially. So no matter what you do, isn't really going to work that well. So we've got that really simple equation. I'm going to try and drag myself away so you can see. Accuracy plus flexibility should be equals consistency, not plus consistency. And the idea here is we need to be accurate enough with the amount of food that we eat and also the types of food that we eat. in order to A, be healthy, and B, move towards our goal. But we need to be flexible enough that we're able to actually stick to the plan. Because I could write the world's most technically correct diet plan for somebody. If they don't follow it, it doesn't work. And we're back at square one. So it's a bit of a balancing act. And we love to talk about this in terms of being a scale. So rather than thinking healthy, unhealthy, on track, off track, at times we'll slide towards accuracy because we've got a specific goal, or we really need to focus on consolidating or building habits. And then other times, work's super stressful, or I'm going on holiday, we slide back to being more flexible, but the habits and routines still in place. So we don't completely fall off the wagon and have to start from square one again. So that's really, really important. With that as well, to drive the changes in body composition we want, which is typically going to be fat loss, it really needs to be worked off a baseline target. We do this for you in the Fat Loss Accelerator. So it takes into account kind of your age, your gender, your body weight, your activity levels as a starting point, and then we can set a target based off of that. In terms of a rate of fat loss to expect or to aim for, so basically you've got 3,500 calories is about half a kilo of fat tissue. So that's where all those rules of your 500 calories per day deficit comes from, etc. So not exact science, but it's a good kind of rough estimate. I think the idea or the goal of losing half a kilo a week is a good goal. So if you think about that in an 8-week period, that's a 4-kilo weight loss. Can you go more than that? Yes, you absolutely can, depending on how much weight you have to lose and how strict you're willing to be with your diet. I believe last time we did this, like 5 kilos was a pretty average weight loss over that 8-week period. The people that had a little bit more weight to lose initially, they would have gone more. I think the most was about 8 kilos, so a kilo a week. So that's something that you can definitely aim for and a goal that you can set for yourself. The idea here with the calorie deficit, so you'll hear the calorie deficit term a lot. It doesn't actually have to come just from your diet. So in fact, sometimes it shouldn't. So if you try and only lose weight through diet alone, it's very, very hard from that behavior and lifestyle point of view to stick to. I find a combination of exercise and diet go really, really well together. And you could relate to that, I'm sure, in terms of if you go to the gym, you're more likely to eat well. And if you eat well, you're more likely to go to the gym, and that momentum starts to build. This also has the advantage of meaning that you don't have to eat as little. So the more that you exercise, the more active you are. So not just in the gym, but in terms of every day, which is why we track things like steps. The more calories you will burn, therefore the more food you can eat and then still lose weight, which is good. There's some simple maths here, but you've got 0.3 to 0.6 kind of calories per kilo of body weight in terms of the amount of calories you're going to burn during kind of moderate to vigorous cardio. So for what we're doing, training at the Hub, we're pretty much in that middle ground, sometimes above as a general kind of rule. So it's going to raise the amount of energy you burn each day, which is going to make it easier to then lose weight. Fat loss is actually a little bit easier than muscle gain, which is a good thing. So in terms of the rate that you can achieve results, it's much faster. You can't really gain muscle the same rate that you can lose fat. So if your goal is to lose fat, which it should be, if you've joined the Fat Loss Accelerator, you have an advantage in that sense. It can happen a lot faster, and it will be much more noticeable in a visual sense because of that. So you'll hear us talk about protein, carbohydrates, and fats. These are what we call macronutrients. So macros, protein, carbs, fats. Protein contains 4 calories per gram. Carbohydrates contain 4 calories per gram, and fats contain 9 calories per gram. So when you are tracking your food or looking at the composition of a meal, The calorie content is made up of a combination of the amount of protein, carbohydrates, and fats within that meal. Your micronutrients, they do not have a caloric load in them. That's the vitamin and minerals. There is that fourth macronutrient, which we should not be aiming for, but it is sometimes very relevant for weight loss, which is alcohol. So alcohol by itself has 7 calories per gram, which is why even if you have low carb beers or vodka lime sodas, people are under this misconception that it's 0 calories. It's not. It's got no carbohydrates in it, but it still has calories in the alcohol itself. We're going to have an entire module on how to go out for meals, how to include having a drink and still lose weight. So don't worry, we're not going to tell you to completely avoid it, but it is something to be mindful of. There's no real way to have your cake and eat it too. Unfortunately, we need to account from the calories from alcohol if our goal is to lose weight. So setting the targets, basically, protein is super, super important. It's to build and repair the structure of our tissues. So we don't really use it for energy throughout the day. We use carbohydrates and fats for that, but what we really want to be doing is calculating our protein based on body weight, and we're calculating that way in terms of a recovery sense rather than an energy sense. So we're not going to be fueling up for a workout with protein. It's more a case of having enough protein to recover from that workout. It's very important for fat loss as well because it's going to be sparing any muscle tissue, which is positive. It has a high thermic effect, which basically means it takes more calories to break down and be digested. It's also very satiating, which basically means it's going to keep you feeling fuller for longer than things like simple carbohydrates and sugars. So fats are an essential nutrient, so we need to have them in the diet. So you can't have a no-fat diet. The minimum needs to be about 0.6 grams per kilo, so all your targets will be at least that. And fats are going to be an energy source for really kind of low intensity activity. So they're not going to fuel workouts per se. That's where our carbs come in. In terms of a range, protein is going to be 1.6 to 2.5 kilos of body weight. I use the example of the 100 kilogram male because my maths makes, it's limited. So I need to make that quite easy. So be 160 to 250 grams of protein per day. If that seems ridiculous, don't worry, we'll build that up over time. And then from there, we calculate the fats and the carbohydrates. This is a real easy starting point, and we can adjust those targets as we go, depending on the results that we are seeing. Muscle gain, not as relevant, but it would just be the exact opposite, which is why I've included it in here. So in terms of that calorie deficit needing to be in place, so we need to have an energy balance. That means we're burning more than we are taking in to lose fat. The opposite is true to really build muscle. Can you do both at the same time? Yes, you can to a certain point. But if you're really focusing on building a lot of muscle, you need to eat a lot of food, which is why for the ladies, you have no risk of, all of a sudden turning into a jacked bodybuilder just by lifting some weights, because unless you are deliberately eating above the amount that you're burning every single day, you're not going to be building a ton of muscle mass. So micronutrients, they don't get a lot of love, but they're super, super important. So vitamins are necessary for energy production, immune function, prevents blood clots, creates blood clots when they're necessary as well. Minerals, growth, bone health, fluid balance, a lot of things, right? By eating a varied and balanced diet with an emphasis on a lot of whole foods, we can ensure that we're getting a lot of things anyway. So you don't really need to focus on them specifically unless you have a health condition that means that your doctor has told you that you should. Or you maybe you have a food allergy, which means you can't eat certain vegetables, etc. Then multivitamins and supplements might be a good idea. But as a general rule, we prefer whole foods. We have that grocery cheat sheet, which is going to have an emphasis on a lot of those foods. And if you're having multiple serves of fruit and vegetables each day, along with good sources of proteins, you're going to tick all of these boxes anyway without really having to think about it at all. We are big believers in the 80-20 rule, which basically means 80% of your food should come from whole, nutritious food, and 20% of your food can come from pretty much whatever you want. So you don't get extra points for being extra healthy. This is a really important point. So we always use the cookie jar analogy. So if you, have your nice breakfast, your nice lunch, your nice dinner, you're eating, good sources of protein, lots of vegetables, things like that. If you have a cookie and it still sits and it meets your kind of calorie requirements, that's absolutely fine. In fact, from a psychological point of view, it's probably more healthy. What we don't want to do is restrict foods to the point that eventually we just cave and we eat the whole damn cookie jar in one sitting and feel terrible about ourselves. So 80-20 rule is a key part of that accuracy plus flexibility, creating the consistency. So don't punish yourself. But the reason it's 80-20 and not the other way around is A, the health and nutrition point of it, but also the fact that whole foods, lean proteins, fresh produce has far less calories than processed food. So if you are trying to lose weight, you can eat a lot more of those types of foods and still lose weight. If you're sticking to processed foods, it's very, very hard to lose weight because you'll constantly be feeling hungry. And it's not hard to consume thousands of calories without even really realizing it. So this is a little quote. I can't remember even who said it, but discipline equals freedom. So I like this saying. Not that I'm saying, you can't do anything, but I really like this idea that by being a little bit more disciplined with what you eat and by building these habits up, you're free to do more of the things that you want to do. And so that's a simple case of sometimes people are a little bit resistant, not you guys because you've joined up this program, but resistant to make the changes because they feel like they're going to be a little bit restricted. But then ultimately they feel like they can't go out and do the things that they want to do. They can't wear the clothes that they want to wear, and they feel quite self-conscious. And to me, that is not freedom. That's true restriction. So I think if we can change some of these behaviors and build some really positive habits, which I guarantee you over time, like you'll feel really good about them and you'll feel good about yourself, that's going to mean down the track, you have so much more freedom to do whatever the hell you want without having those type of thoughts anymore. That to me means, the juice is worth the squeeze. So the big thing as well is going to be over these 8 weeks is that results dictate the changes, which basically means depending on what happens, that's going to dictate what we change each week. So sometimes if all really good things are happening, we might not need to change much. Otherwise, we might need to make some tweaks. So we start off with those calculations. From there, depending on what actually happens, that's when we can make the changes over time. So hopefully that makes sense. So measuring and assessing progress. So I know I mentioned this in one of the other videos, but in terms of making those changes, we need to have some kind of idea of if what we're doing is working or not. So body weight, if we're doing a fat loss program, it's a pretty important metric. And often people get surprised when I tell them to weigh themselves every day. I would suggest doing it as often as you can, ideally each morning. So same time of day, wake up, go to the bathroom, jump on the scales. Why do we do it so often? Number one, I want you to get used to this idea that fluctuations in your body weight are completely normal and that you don't need to have an emotional response to it. That it's absolutely fine if it goes up or goes down. Over time, we're just looking for trends. Number two, it's a far more accurate way to do it. Taking an average of 7 days gives us a far better picture of what's going on rather than just 1 day per week or 1 day per fortnight or 1 day per month. So by doing that, you get used to the idea that your body weight goes up and down. It's just part of life. You don't need to get too attached to it. And two, it's far more accurate. So it means we know if something's working or not. Hopefully that makes sense. The other thing we can do, I think I just said that. Oh, yes. Circumferences and skin folds. Do you have to do this? No. If you are interested in it, please let me know and we will do it. So circumferences is basically taking your measurement. Skin fold is with the calipers. So We can do these to get a little bit of a better idea as well. So combining the idea of the body weight, progress photos, and circumferences and skin folds, we can get a very good idea. And these things are far more accurate in terms of if your circumferences are going down, that really tells us the whole story. Much more so than just body weight or any of those scanners, etc. Skin fold testing is a little bit more invasive, and we wouldn't do that every week. So we probably only do that monthly or fortnightly at most to get a true, accurate reflection of that. Let us know if you want to do that. I won't force you to do that. Don't worry. So when we're assessing things as well, you'll notice in your daily questionnaire, there'll be things like your sleep. You can also track resting heart rate and blood pressure. So I would recommend, if you're not already, tracking those types of things, at least kind of on a weekly basis. We have the blood pressure monitor in the hub in reception if you would like to use it. If you don't have one, that will also track your resting heart rate, but you can also get that if you have a Fitbit, Apple Watch, Garmin, anything like that. Excellent. So that is my trying to be brief overview of some of the more sciencey side of the nutrition and kind of the why behind the what we're going to do. If you have no interest in any of that and you're just thinking, Max, shut up, I just want to lose some weight, I don't care about calories, that is absolutely fine. That's what we're here for. But if you do, want to know the why, then hopefully that has covered some of those things as well.